I joked on our first take that when you experience technical difficulties, I think you just need to have a pour to make it go better. And I think we're going to figure this out tonight if that is the case, because whether it's mine, Brandon's, or Joe's, it seems to be one of those nights where technology doesn't want to work. But I know what will work, and those are good pours. It's Jonathan, your boy Brandon. And Brandon, do you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in from Minden Mill out in Nevada, Master Distiller Joe O'Sullivan. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Yes, we are. And I'm excited for this one because we're truly going to get three totally different whiskeys. We've got the bourbon, we've got the rye, and then we're going to kick it all off with something I think that Joe is just a little bit passionate about, and that is the American Single Malt. So, Joe, would you like to, lead us into this lovely bottle, this lovely pour?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to have to deal with me being on a little bit of a passion soapbox with this one because, I do have this reputation of really caring about single malts. There's a good reason for that. I was really lucky in my career to be trained by a man named Steve McCarthy who released the first American single malts. And this, to me, making single malts is not just about the heritage and the tradition of being a distiller, something that I'm always humbled by, but this is about the tradition that was directly handed to me and the creation of a new category. So everything you taste in the bottle, this is not just the end of 8 years of ratification work on behalf of the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission. This isn't just about America entering the world stage when it comes to whiskey, because the globe cares more about single malt than they do about bourbon and rye. This is about me connecting with somebody who gave me my chance. And there's another Joe in some parallel universe that never met Steve McCarthy, and I'm sure they're happy, but I bet they're not as happy as I am. And so this is a great way for me to say thanks about what's so important about this.
I love to hear that, and I'm excited to try this because Brandon and I have been fortunate to do this show and get to try a lot of things. And single malt's one of the newer ones that we're getting to try there for a little while. It was weeded stuff that was kind of coming online when we first started doing these. A lot more of it, and the single malt is now here. And like you said, it's officially in the TTB, which it was a long process for y'all to get to that point.
Ungodly long.
So before we get into the passion part, can you talk a little bit about what your American single malt whiskey brings to the table?
Well, I mean, I don't think that the stage in American single malt that anyone is really too distant from the homeland of single malt, from Scotland. So we're always looking back. We're always kind of going back and looking into the past, trying to connect, trying to find inspiration from what they're doing there. And ours is very much Speyside leaning. When I worked at McCarthy's, it was very much Isla. We were getting peated malt. But this is different. This is all about the fruit. And what's key to what everything we're doing, and you had mentioned that the spirits were all wildly different, the rye, the bourbon, and the single malt. But they're also kind of the same because we're an estate distillery. That is, I think, my most favorite thing that we have, and that we're growing our own grain. Being an estate distillery means that in Nevada, you have to be responsible and grow 85% of your raw fermentable grain, or it's your license depends on it. This isn't a claim of doing things for no reason. This is about trying to develop terroir and deliver something to the people that they can't get anywhere else. So on the 1,200 acres that we can farm every year, we grow all of our own corn, all of our own rye, our barley, and our wheat. And so what you're tasting in this glass is barley that's not coming out of the most perfect growing conditions. These are challenging growing conditions. A lot of people don't understand this about Nevada, but Northern Nevada is cold. We're at about 5,000 feet here. We get intense snow. It is definitely the windiest place I've ever lived, and I've lived some pretty windy places from the Columbia Gorge to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. This easily beats all of them. And that stress, that aggression that the climate has on the grain, that being burned in the summer, being frozen in the winter, just the fact that the soil here is so rocky and sandy and clay-like, but is fed by this snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada, it develops something you can't really find anywhere else. So when you try our single malt, you're going to get that really nice cereal approach on the front end, but there's going to be a lot of esterification on it. How deeply do you guys want me to nerd out on how we make this stuff?
Well, I was
Big
gonna
Bang
say,
Theory, full nerd.
yeah, but Brandon beat me to it. I mean, it's you. We're going to talk about unique mash bills with your other ones, because to me, you guys come in with some slightly different things with the rye and the bourbon. Even your 4 grains a little different than what people might think of with a 4 grain. So let's get into this, because I don't think Brandon and I are well versed enough to know enough about American Single Malt. I know one thing: it's one malt. That I got that part, and it's used barrels usually, and that's as far as I'm really gonna before I get myself in trouble.
All right, well, I'll start at the beginning. You heard me talk about the Carson Valley. This is just grain that only comes from here. I mean, we are as of the soil as you can be at Minden Mill. But what we're doing is we're growing out all that barley. We're sending it to our malt house. We have an auto malter. We have a floor malting facility. No floor malt has entered into what you have in front of you. That's going to be for limited offers later on. But everything comes from auto malting. So right there, we're malting our own barley, which is phenomenal. But that's still not the coolest part of what we're doing. Anyone who comes and takes the tour will see these 2 beautiful Forsyth stills. For the folks out there who don't know, the Forsyths are 6th-generation Scottish still manufacturers. If you look at a photograph of a classic Scottish distillery, you're going to see Forsyth stills. These are just beautiful pieces of copper, the thickest copper of any still manufacturer, is my speculation, because those things are beefy. But that's only part of what's so neat. We're cooking with something that's really innovative, where a lot of folks are operating their distillery with low-pressure steam. And we are too for our bourbon and our rye. For our single malt, we wanted to best reproduce direct fire. I started off as a direct fire stiller back in 2005. I've seen, what happens when you get vapor too close to a firebox. It does flash over, it sets off sprinklers. It's a total mess. And we don't really understand why the fire chief didn't want us to put a massive flame next to a whole bunch of vapor in the middle of the town of Minden. So we're the first distillery, as far as I can tell. I'm not going to say that's a definite claim because I haven't done enough research, but I can't seem to find anyone that's older to use what's known as a thermal oil calandria. So instead of a counterflow heater heating up water to go into an insert to heat the product, or to put steam into the insert to heat the wash, what we're using is this thermal oil. And with low pressure steam, you're going to hit 120 degrees Celsius. With direct fire, you're going to hit 200 degrees Celsius. But with what we're able to do is by heating up this thermal oil, the thermal oil is just mineral oil, same thing you'd put on your butcher block. No need to think it's anything more dangerous than that. It's all food grade, but that we can heat up to whatever temperature we want. So we're actually cooking this wash at 185 degrees Celsius, which means you're exceeding the Maillard reaction that puts sear on steak and crumb on bread, and the caramelization on creme brulee. That's all Maillard, right? So those really detailed esters that come out, we're producing that in the new make. And from that, it's going to our rickhouse. And the other aspect about being in the high desert is we have 11% humidity on average. When we first got going, this is before I got here, we were looking to age things using local climate, and we were losing 2 to 3% to angel share per month. For the folks out there, 5% a year is about what you look for in year one. We were losing 2 to 3% a month. You can imagine what the extraction rate was going to be, how bad that stuff was going to be. And so we have our rickhouse, that is where we age the single malt, tied to a weather station in Ballinderloch, Scotland. So you can go from the dusty heat of the Carson Valley directly into this super humid, just slightly chilly, beautiful northern Scottish environment. And so there's this one, you don't really know what to wear that day sometimes, because if you're working in that rickhouse for a long period of time, you go to work hot as can be, and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of cold in here. On top of that, we're using a whole bunch of different barrels with this. There's new oak, there's used bourbon, there's STR wine casks and different sherry casks as well. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, and we're still figuring it out, but the basic flavor characteristics are always there. One of the things I love about single malt is the ability to create a little bit on the fly, and if you discover that for that batch it's going to be particularly punchy if you just add in one more bourbon barrel or one less. What I love about American Single Malt is that you can have those little tweaks from batch to batch, which really allows you to play with the spirit that's presented to you. Any good distiller will know it's all about raw ingredients, but the raw ingredient can change. The raw ingredient can be anything from the grain to the new make to the spirit you're blending. It's just whatever step you're representing, and you have to listen to the raw ingredients. And that's all coming from my team and our lead blender, who's John and Bryce, Noya, Chelsea. I mean, we have the best crew there imaginable. They make my job incredibly easy.
Very nice. Now, you mentioned those climate-controlled rickhouses. Can you just go a little bit more in detail about, like, how that affects the whiskey, and then does it change for each whiskey, or it may not, but if it does, just like how does that process work? Yeah.
It's a great question, and yeah, it has tremendous effects. When I was at Clear Creek Distillery back in the past, I was lucky enough to have the unique experience of working with barrels that were on the western side of the Cascades, then immediately went to the dry eastern side of the Cascades. And you saw a very different maturation process, where if you're in a humid environment, you see a very slow loss of alcohol, but what you see is a much softer maturation. It goes a lot slower. You want to extend that maturation to go out into used barrels for as long as possible. Our single malt's 5 years, and of course we're going to be aging up, and that's the whole plan. But you want that cooler environment so you can age longer, because you want to slow down that extraction. Now, if we were to take that and we were to put it into our other rickhouse, which I'm just going to not bury the lead now, is climate controlled to Bardstown, Kentucky, you would have a very much more rapid expression and a more intense extraction of the whiskey itself. And that's really the difference between working in something that's chilly and high humidity versus warm and high humidity, or if you're really crazy, warm and low humidity, in which case you'll see a tremendous spike in the loss of water, and you'll just see this really massive climb in alcohol content, which of course can speed up extraction and make it really nasty pretty quick.
That's crazy.
I think you're blowing Brandon's mind.
You literally did. That's just crazy that you can just set it for any kind of weather climate you want.
Well, I mean, we can set it for that. It does not mean the compressors and the chillers are all that happy with us. I went in there this weekend to show some family. One of them was screaming. It was so loud. And so, these are the sacrifices you make when you're trying to do something nice. Sometimes you have to be very mean to your machinery. But honestly, the thermal load of the barrels, once everything gets established, it kind of maintains itself. So there's an initial kind of uptick in investment of energy to get it to that humidity and to that temperature that you want it. But once it's there, it kind of takes care of itself for some time. And that's just the kind of thing we're trying to do here at Minden. Is we're really trying to change. We're trying to make. I think the best way to say it is, we're trying to make incredibly traditional whiskey and spirits using some of the most innovative and new technology out there. And so, in between those two things, you get something that's both familiar and innovative at the same time.
I love that, and that's kind of what you should, in a sense, you should be doing if you're kind of newer to the game. I mean, you guys aren't dating back to 1930. Now, the site has some history, and we'll get into that at some point here. But, like you guys can have a little bit of fun and try some new things, but still have those traditional values. And this single malt, like I said, coming in when I said, let's go Big Bang Theory, start from there and all the way through, because, like I said, Brandon and I, we're getting into these. We've had a few and more recently. I think we're beginning to really appreciate what is going into those, because it's a whole different process than what we're used to, and this is pretty flavorful. And for me, I always worry with single malts. I hear single malt, you hear Irish, you hear Scottish whiskey. I don't love the smoky peatedness. That's not my thing. But this is not that. This is a very flavorful, approachable too, I think.
Fruit forward. I mean, there's a whole lot of cherry. For folks out there, I mean, this is a fruit ester bomb. This is cherry. This is fruit compote. This is lots of plum. This is lots and lots of apricot, but little bits of almond and marzipan in there too. And there's caramel as well, toffee. I mean, that's what's so great about it. There's something great about the whole American single malt movement, because it's putting us on that world stage, and to get accolades from people in Ireland and Scotland, to hear the awards come rolling in. I'm still waiting to see if I can talk about. Oh, I got notification. Yay! So broken right here today on this podcast. The single malt just got platinum for the Ascot Awards. So I'm really excited to announce that. That's a huge accolade. Thank you, Fred. Fred, we love you very much. I hope you come and hang out with us. But this is exactly what all that effort puts into things, and I can't take credit for this without, again, mentioning that I'm only one member of a team, and this is about trying to, even beyond that, take something from this community and bring it to the wider world. In the future, you're going to see a lot more talk about estate distilling, because it is so unique, because it is so uni-presentational. We're not getting rye out of Canada. We're not getting corn out of Indiana. This is our rye. This is our corn, and it tastes different for the reasons that it's tough out here, and it's beautiful, and you can get beautiful, tough things from it.
That's awesome. I love that. And Brandon, what's your thoughts? Because, like I said, for me, this was definitely way more approachable than I was thinking. Maybe having a little bit of reserve, coming into it. But what are you thinking on this one?
Well, just in all honesty, Joe, normally I shy away from single malts, just because it's never been my cup of tea. But I will say, I do appreciate a good single malt Scotch, non-peat. But when it comes to the bourbon and whiskey, just like general sense here, kind of in the bourbon world, but single malts, it just hasn't really hit for me. But this one, it's very approachable, like we mentioned, very, like you said, very fruit forward, very, very easy drinking. Like you could sip on this all day long or whatever you want. Like it ain't it's dangerous, kind of, honestly. Like you could just have several of these and next thing you know, you don't even know what happened. But
there's not a distiller in the country that doesn't love hearing the word dangerous. It's kind of, when you tell us we've made something dangerous, we feel very accomplished.
Right, because it is. I mean, it's that smooth. It's that good. It's, and don't get me wrong. Like when you drink it, you can tell, especially those with us who have the experience in it and have the palate, you can tell it's definitely single malt. But it just has just a different flavor that hits different than any other single malts that I've had. So.
That's the beauty of American single malt. If you look at the size of Scotland and you think of all the little regions of Highland and Speyside and Lowland and Islay, that's amazing what they've been able to come up with in that geographical region. But the U.S. is so much bigger, and you look forward 20 years from now, you'll see manifestations of culture and flavor coming out of the U.S. that's a reflection of us, in the same way that the folks in Islay who are so dear to Pete, that's a reflection of their style. You'll see these little regional examples come from across the country, and that's what's so exciting for a producer like me. This takes there's a lot of creative effort that goes into bourbon and rye. This is not to diminish that by any means, but this is a different creative effort because we can use whatever barrels we want, and that allows us to paint with an entirely different set of colors. It's like waking up and all of a sudden you see the same spectrum as a bee or something like that. You can just broaden in a way that you couldn't before. And if you were to go ahead 20 years from now, you'll see America leading the way in single malt because of the variety of people that we have and the variety of cultures and in climates and everything. And that's what's so darn cool about it, because it's such a reflection of wherever you're from. Japanese single malt is very technical, very exacting, and that's, you know, that's kind of a, not to generalize, but a cultural perception of the Japanese people. It's still artistic and creative, but it's very exact. And these things kind of come through. So, you know, maybe in 20 years, American Single Malt will be a beautiful hot mess like we are.
Hey, I love it. Well,
I'm here
and you
for it.
talk about, yeah, I was gonna say, you talk about like the barrels, just like when you talk about being an artist. I mean, I'm gonna run down the list, Brandon, of what they use. You know, this whiskey is aged for 5 years in a barrel regimen. I love that it's a you know, of Oloroso sherry, ex-bourbon, American oak cask, along with recharred wine and sherry butts. And like, that's a lot of different things that you're able to play with to then, you know, kind of, you know, like you said, in a sense, manipulate a little bit and get something that's really, really cool. And to your point too, I feel like so much of the bourbon and whiskey that we try, people are starting to play with those. So now you're getting there's almost any variety of cask out there that has had something finished in it or whatever.
Yeah.
That I'm sure you get to sometimes go, maybe I want to play with that one today and just see. And I love it.
Oh man, there's I mean, I have plans down the road of specialty finishes I want to do. I mean, can you imagine that stuff? You've tried it. You can see the basic flavor profile, but imagine now finishing it or including a fair number of ex-stout casks to give it that deeper, roastier note. Like, I mean, you can really expand upon and complement with a lot of contrast by using all these different barrels. And so for the folks that they're drinking, I mean, if you are a whiskey drinker and you want to really understand the influence of barrels, single malt's the shortest path to getting there. And amongst our regimen, I mean, this is a creative palette that we're playing from. So it's going to be variations of this to a certain degree with every release.
I love that. And to your point, you already saw what America did to beer, so who knows what in the world could happen to single malt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, with that said, we have a few different bottles that I also want to get in. I have a feeling Brandon and I will be coming back to the single malt, though, by the time we finish this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But our second pour is the Nevada Straight Rye Whiskey.
The Nevada Straight Rye Whiskey also got platinum at the Ascot Awards. Happy to say that. That's 2 platinums just announced today.
Congrats.
And now we'll be better at making sure it's actually in the frame. There we go.
Woo! Yeah, I think that our rye is probably the best testament to what we're trying to say about terroir and estate distilling, because this is the same winter rye that you would find in anyone else's winter rye whiskey. There's not a lot of, and you're going to hear me talk more about this when we get to bourbon, but there's a lot of corn varietals out there. There's Bloody Butcher, there's there's blue corn, there's there's Earth Tones corn, there's Yellow Dent, and so they all have different characteristics. And some of this has been pushed along by things like, you know, wanting decorative corn on your porch during Halloween. Indian corn is pretty and it has a commodity value to it, but it also distills really differently. When you're talking about winter rye, like, there's not decorative winter rye that people are putting up around their scarecrow in October. That's just not a thing. And so you're using the same winter rye that everyone else has, but the majority of folks are getting it out of Canada because it grows so well there. Rye is from Poland, it's from Russia. It wants cold, nasty weather. And you heard what I said about the high desert. It can be rough here, it can be cold, it can be biting, and so it grows incredibly well here. But that dryness that I labeled as such a irritation to our maturation process really benefits us in the rye, because rye is also really susceptible to mold, and you don't get any of it in ours. It's just too darn dry here. So you get this really nice manifestation of citrus that you would never find where everybody else in their rye, because most folks are getting it from very similar sources, get this heavy black pepper quality to the profile. Ours is, I mean, I describe it as candied orange. And I don't mean orange candies. I mean when you take a thin slice of orange and you cure it in sugar for like a couple of weeks, and the entire thing gelatinizes, and it's just gooey and nice, but still has that pith in it. It's just that's what I get more than the black pepper. And we've partnered up with the Estate Whiskey Alliance out of the University of Kentucky to focus on specifically these questions. How do we monitor terroir within spirits? Is there terroir within spirits? If you ask me, I'm going to say straight up yes. But how do we prove it? What is the line to prove it, and what is the value of it? And what you're seeing in this glass is like, rye can be different. Rye is not just black pepper. And if we diversify the location of the grains we're getting, we've opened up entirely new doors that we didn't know were there for what distillers can have and what the drinking public can consume.
No, you're spot on, and the nose on this thing is phenomenal. Like I haven't even taken a sip yet, but I've just been enjoying sniffing.
I've almost finished mine first pour.
So I think you liked it.
Oh yeah. Like I was waiting on this one, like, because the rye family is my favorite family.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, like you mentioned, a lot of people, most people, normal people, I guess, with palates, they get that peppery taste. They get that spice from the rye. I've never gotten spice from rye. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know, but it's just always get that. I get sweetness from rye.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's why I guess I just always have appreciated and loved the rye family, just because the sweetness on the back end for me just kind of mellows everything out. It marries everything together. I don't know, but this the finish on this is a different finish than I've probably ever had when it comes to a rye. And you think you nailed it right on the head. It's like the candied orange, or it's just it's just different, and it's very good.
And I don't even want to, because I want to call it like a softer finish, but I don't want it to sound because the soft, you think, oh, the flavor goes away. That's not what I'm saying. It's just it's just this easygoing, drinkable thing.
Right.
Brandon mentioned dangerous on the other one. To me, this one, goodness gracious, like this is totally different from what you would expect from what most people think of when they have a rye whiskey. And this is a unique mash bill. It's an 80-10-10 with that 80% rye, 10% wheat, and that 10% estate malted barley. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, and then don't.
Oh, we have no intention of that. We would never stop. We're having too much fun.
Yeah.
And making good stuff.
And this is another one that's really worth talking about barrels. We've had a very large number of great barrel providers from Kelvin to Barrel Mill to Seguin Moreau. For at the moment we're exclusively Seguin Moreau, and they're a French barrel cooperage out of Northern California. I like using wine cooperages if I can. You get 36-month air-dried staves. I mean, that is just alone worth the price. For anyone out there who doesn't understand the value of air-dried staves, is when you're making a barrel, you put these staves outside for 3 years, and they're exposed to snow and wind and sun and rain, and all of those gummy, more astringent tannins fall. They just get washed out, bleached out of the barrel, leaving behind a far more amount of vanillins and sugars that are not in any way overshadowed by some of those more astringent qualities that you would get from something that's a kiln-dried barrel or kiln-dried staves. So the fact that we are using these high-end barrels, the fact that they're in our backyard, I mean, California's our neighbor. That to me is like, that's another aspect of real selective usage in making some of the best products possible. And I'm not in any way. We've had great barrel providers all along, but this comes into it. And this is all number 3 char. A little bit of French oak heads on a few of them, but this is very. We're talking like a tiny percentage. It does shape the spirit. It's a little bit of a. We're not gonna. It's a little bit of a cheat in order to get a little bit of more. I would think round quality in there, but too much French oak is really dangerous with whiskeys. It comes across as gummy and aggressive if you do it wrong. The blend we have with all of our whiskeys is really phenomenal, but when they brought me in to interview for this position, the rye was what sold me. Because to me, this is a really amazing product that bridges. It's interesting enough for the bourbon drinker to really enjoy this as an alternative to bourbon, but it's also unique enough for the rye drinker to find it as something, unique and new. And there's so much daylight in the rye market that it's kind of fun to lead the way on something. And I do think we should be challenging some of those pre-existing flavor conceptions of what rye can be.
Yeah, and that's for me what I know. John can speak on this too, but that's what we appreciate about, like the new players to the game, right? Like, it ain't just about the big conglomerates that have been doing it for 100 years or so. Like yes, those are fine when it's time or whatever, but they have their own place in history. But we appreciate what we do, and having folks like you guys on so we can try and hear about your all's different story, your all's different techniques, different ideas. Because, I come from a world in my everyday job where I hear every day, it's like, well, that's how we've been doing it for the last 30 years, so why change? It's like,
yeah,
no, that's dumb. Like we're past that. So that's why I appreciate, like, hearing how folks like you and all the new players to the game that are bringing something new and fresh to this world of whiskey and bourbon, and it's great. It's great to be a part of, and I love it. You guys are doing fantastic work.
I mean, this is every distillery out there wishes they were growing their own grain. We're the lucky ones that get to. I'm not gonna say that we're doing something like we're reaching beyond what someone else has thought of. We just happen to be able to pull it off because of funding. But if you were going to be one of the lucky ones, don't take it for granted. Make the best things you possibly can. And I had told the community of Minden that I really want that town to be known. In my tenure, I want to make it known for whiskey. And I intend on delivering on that promise, because it's a small little town in a forgotten corner of Nevada. I mean, we are 9 hours north of Vegas. There is no one up here except for Reno. And Reno, love you, Reno. You're my bro. But at the same time, like, I would love to bring a little bit of sunshine to Minden and to the Carson Valley, and take a little bit of that sunshine away from Tahoe, because we're cool on the dry side too. It's not just, we got that lake nearby, but we're really awesome down the desert. We got rocks and stuff.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, you talk about Minden. You talk about, just mentioned briefly where it's at. The geographical location of it, the importance and how it affects the grain and the rise and all that stuff that you guys are growing. So talk about, like, tell us about, like, where does the name come from and the history of the site? Because, I think from what we understand, there is a little bit of history there from the distilling site.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Minden is the name of the town, but it's one of the earliest settlements in Nevada. Genoa is right down the road. That's the first one. It has the oldest bar. If you ever want to have a great time, head out to Genoa and head out to their bar, the Genoa Saloon, or I think it's the proper name. I don't know. I just roll in there. You're familiar with the place, and you don't know the name, but you do know what you order. Yeah. So it is kind of an older part of the state, not far from the Donner Party region of the Sierra Nevadas, and Minden itself was the site where the Minden Mill was where the very first well was dug that fed the community. And so this town of Minden grew up with milling for grain and butter or dairy for butter, and of course lots of cattle ranching in the area because there's lots of ranching to do. And all of that was to support kind of the growing Comstock, the silver mining that was a big part of the history of Nevada coming out of Virginia City. And we haven't really done much to those buildings except make them seismically strong and also distilleries. But the exterior of it, I mean, these are all National Historic buildings. And not just to that, we're doing our best to make sure that these buildings are in good shape, that they're properly handled. We are LEED Gold certified, so it's leadership in environmental engineering and design. And right in the smack middle of it is that well. So the aquifer that we're drawing from is not just the oldest pump in Minden, Nevada, not just one of the oldest pumps in the region, but still supplies the community with water. We get first dibs. You can't own water in this state. At the height of summer, you think high desert, it's going to be really dry all the time. Yes, it is on the surface. Down below, even at the height of summer, we were pulling out last year at 150 gallons a minute. So we were really filling up that well quick. And it's all fed by the Sierra snowmelt. So you're getting this really beautiful, well-filtered water coming out of the mountains. And so anyone who goes to Tahoe, I mean, 20 minutes away, you have this world-class distillery that is beautiful beyond belief, classic brickwork all over the place, and also has this historic connection because the mill building was in fact the mill for that town. And from 1906 to I think it was 1964, it processed grain, and then it was shuttered for about 40 years. And when we started up again, we're still processing grain. It's only done one thing. It's just a different execution. It's still a mill. We still have mills in it. It's just the silos that we make our products in is where our stills are. And so you have this really amazing experience. It's almost like a temple to whiskey. And then right on the same campus, and I can't believe I get to say I have a distillery with a campus, but we have the creamery, which is where we make the rye and the bourbon. And that is, surprise, surprise, the old Minden butter factory. Again, going off to make products to help support the people of the growing region.
Man, it's some really, really good stuff. I mean, and to see the history that you guys have kept and do, and you know, we talk about it being in Kentucky, you know, the limestone, you know, all that stuff. But you know, there's something to be said about, you know, some snow melt, because Brandon and I have been fortunate enough to travel around a little bit and see some pretty cool things, and that's some pretty cool water coming down off that mountain.
Yeah, it's amazing, but just like what Kentucky's been so good at is that you don't insult the gifts that you're given. That limestone water is so important to everything that comes out of that region, and we're not gonna try to. I mean, we kind of are forced into aping your environment for our barrel aging, you know. But that Mother Nature's not always for us. But in this case, our water is amazing, and it's this beautiful palette to paint against. Because a bottle at 80 proof is still 60% water. And if you don't have good water, you don't have good whiskey. And that's I've lived in 7 states. Every state's relatively the same. They all think they're being invaded by Californians, New Yorkers, or people from Connecticut or Texas. And they all say they have really great water. Half the time, the water still tastes to me like a swimming pool. This water is phenomenal, and I was shocked at how good it was. To me, it's an obvious thing to use as a cutting agent.
Well, and like I said, you guys are doing some cool stuff, and you know, we've had a single malt, we've had a rye, so why don't we finish off the night with a bourbon?
Woo!
See, he knows what he's doing. He put it right in the middle.
Fred liked this too. He gave it a gold. So, hey, that's 3. Oh, you managed to win on all 3, announced just here today.
Go. Congrats.
Golf clap.
Thanks, guys. I can't wait to go in and tell the crew, because I don't think I didn't know I could tell them yet. So congrats to all the folks at Minden. Thanks for making my job easy.
Absolutely. Congrats. Like, you guys are doing great stuff. But yeah.
Now this one, you know, we talked about, you know, the single malt. It had a unique barrel regimen. The rye, it had an 80-10-10. You don't normally see something like that. This one's got a 4-grain mash bill, but it is not your typical 4-grain mash bill. You want to explain the mash bill and kind of lead us into this pour?
So this is going to be 60% earth tones corn. This is a really intense looking corn. It is about every color a corn can be, all smashed into one. And sometimes it's just all one. So I have one cob that's all green. I have another cob that's all orange, one that's all red. But most of them are just a hodgepodge of every anthocyan and every carotenoid you can squeeze into that corn. And it is starchy. I mean, there is no sugar when you eat it raw. And that's really good for us because we can convert all that starch and you're getting all of those other flavor characteristics from this wild corn that we're using. But we're also using 20% same winter rye, 10% barley, and then 10% in this release it's oats. We later on switch from oats to wheat, and that's the early release is oats, but putting oatmeal on your stills has proven to be kind of destructive, and mostly to people's tolerance of me asking them to put oats into a still. It's cooking oatmeal. You see what happens at the bottom of your pot. Well, imagine that on all your equipment, and try to feel good about that decision. So we switched to wheat later on, but the first few releases are all going to be oats. This one is going to have amazing, I call it cherry cola. If you're trying to really communicate broadly, pick one flavor note. Cherry cola all the way. You get that deep spice. You're getting something from the earth tones that I've never seen before in a bourbon itself, and I really think that that's the heart and soul of this product, is using unusual corns. And we're always experimenting. We have 80 acres of experimental corn going on this year.
I don't know what to say, Brandon. You might have to talk, because I'm very confused, and I know they're three different products, but y'all have done something completely different with each, and they're all very, very good.
This is a great problem to have, is to look at the blessings that you got. When I drive into work, I'm coming out of Carson City, and I drop down. It's like 10 minutes away. I drop down into the Carson Valley, and if off to my right, I see these snow-capped mountains, and off to my left, I see the ranch that we grow on, and straight ahead, I see the distillery, and in one scope is every ingredient we use. And that is not a thing that people get to experience. And I'm not the only one that appreciates that. I mean, we go to work every day wanting to turn out the best we absolutely possibly can.
I mean, that's the epitome of farm to table, right?
Yeah. Nothing comes from without 2 or 3 miles away from the distillery.
That's amazing. And I don't know if we've had or talked to of anybody that does that in the game, or even has the capabilities of it. If we have, I don't remember it. I don't remember who, and I apologize if there's folks out there that we've interviewed and I just don't. But
no, I wouldn't say to that extreme, to the estate level that Joe is talking about, because we have some regional. We've had some, but that's still, that could be a couple hours away, which is still makes a difference. But but yeah, no, that man.
I mean, okay, this right here is one of the like holy shit moment that I just had, because I've had like 4 drinks of this, and it's all been the same. It's all been the same flavor. It's all been smooth, and it's been like, I mean, just a flavor bomb that's not just. I just can't.
I don't even need to mix it.
Like, no,
I don't need to mix it.
I mean,
don't even get me started on that, man. Come on, dude. Like, we're past that. We moved past that, John.
So this is a type of bourbon that I hope people can try whiskeys however they want. I personally am a fan of a single ice cube and experiencing the adventure of just the cube giving itself over to the whiskey, and that churning and the convection that you see happen, I think releases magic. And I love the slow process of that. How I found myself as part of this whole project is just such a cool thing, and I take it very seriously. So these blends that we're producing here, I mean, these are good things, and I'm glad that you guys have kind of clued into some of the flavors that we're trying to do. Am I wrong about the cherry cola?
Oh no, you're not. No.
When I joked, because the show's called Neat and Mix. We started when I mixed it. He drank it neat. That's how it all started. I joke on this one though, because it really does taste like you've already mixed it with something, in like a good way though, like, because it's just got that flavor.
But you're right on you nailed it on the head when you said cherry cola, because when my first sip of it, I was just like, "What is that?" Like I'm sitting here thinking in my mind. You could probably go back and watch it on video when we drop this, and I'm sitting there going, like, just thinking. And you're right. It is like a cherry cola, um, esque finish, but it's in a fantastic single, neat bourbon way. It ain't like you're drinking the real sugary thing, but
Yeah. I don't want anyone to think that this
no,
has a sugared element to it. It doesn't have any of
definitely
that.
not.
This is bone dry.
No,
But
no.
but that spice is there and that sweetness is there, and the cherry is a kind of a to do cherry right, it usually doesn't taste the way that you think it does. And mind you, we're not trying to come up with anything, but to understand the flavor of cherry, it's usually not what you think of, because the flavor of cherry that we get is in our minds is almost always maraschino cherry. Cherries themselves, like there's a lot of cellulose flavor in there. There's a lot of depth. I worked at Clear Creek, which we were really well known for making eau de vies and fine fruit brandies, and so I got real familiar with fruit. And cherry is a very complicated flavor. I think this product does the best to describe it than many other intentionally flavored cherry things. And that's just because it really is just an execution of great grain and good barrel maturation and great blending from our lead blender.
Yeah, I even get, you talk about cherry, I get that a lot, but I even get notes and hints of, like the cordial cherry at Christmas time, the
Mm-hmm.
holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not so much, maybe, the sweetness can come in there with a little bit of that chocolate, but, and cream, but it's, wow,
Well, and what
completely,
I love
like,
too is,
fantastic.
we talk a lot of the things, and usually, I say usually, I'm going to backtrack on that. When we have different things, we've had everything from the typical 80, 85 kind of low entry proofs, a lot of things randomly 125 and things like that. These are some of the smoothest, and I know that's an old word that everyone doesn't want to say, but it truly describes this. These are all 94 proof, all three of these, but my goodness, like when Brandon said dangerous at the first one, I kind of echoed it at the rye. This one is there too because it's just all these are super easy sipping whiskeys, but they're a little bit on that side you got to watch because, like I said, it's 94 proof. You have a few too many. You might not like how you feel in the morning, but but that goes back to that. Like I said, what Brandon said at the first one. It's just these things are golly flavorful, and all three so different.
And I'll add another, like, a compliment to this. This is aged 4 years. If I would have handed this glass blindly to any of my friends and said, take a guess on the age statement, they would have started with at least 8.
Yeah.
And, and that just goes to the, again, just applauding what you guys are doing because this is so smooth that you would not, I would have never guessed if somebody blindfolded or even covered up the age statement on this bottle and said this is 4 years. But
There's two great ways to make a whiskey. You can make it on the still or you can make it in the barrel. The good folks do them both. And so it's really good cuts. We're not greedy with our cuts. We care about quality right from the moment it leaves the still, and we don't push it longer than it needs to be pushed. And in barrel maturation and making sure that we are harvesting respectfully of the barrels that we have, and holding back on it. There's some honey barrels that we're holding back on for older aging. Don't you worry about that. So those really special barrels, they don't always
of
get pulled
course,
for the basic blend.
of course,
Yeah, you got to hold back on that stuff. So
yeah,
it really does come down to that twofold approach. That you can make it on the still, you can make it on the barrel, but if you really want to have fun, you make it on both.
Well, and I think what I love even more than that is this is something Brandon and I talk about all the time. Is yes, what's in the bottle is what we judge so much off of, but Brandon and I usually go one step further, and that is price point. Where you're at the end of the day, you hope to be able to get a bottle or two or three if you like something. Some you can't. You all,
yep.
and it blew my mind after hearing you talk about the barrel sourcing of something that is a 3-year-old barrel. When you think about it, like it's been aging for 3 years to get to the point where you guys then take it. The rye and the bourbon are 4-year age statements. The single malt is 5. Brandon, we're talking about approachable price points of $45 for the rye and bourbon and $60 for the single malt. That is amazing. And how are you guys kind of able?
That's insane.
We are at a growth stage, man. We believe in what we're making, and so if we can get out there big and bold, that's just going to it's going to give us more passion and more incentive to continue to lay down and continue to grow.
But again,
So
those price points, you guys can keep those at a reasonable price because you guys are. I mean, you've got everything on the land that you need, basically, like to make this, and it helps tremendously cutting out, distribution or whatever it is, or allocating different, grains and materials, and I mean, that's huge.
yeah, and we're mindful of the fact that these are. It's not the easiest time financially for anyone right now. I think we can just make that statement. But that being said, there's still good whiskey out there, and it would be, I don't know if it'd be really in our vibe to want to launch at too high a cost right now. Everybody at the distillery, we didn't make that decision. The distiller's production team doesn't make that sort of decision. We talk about it, but ultimately that's more the finance call. But every person in production, we all were overjoyed when we heard that it was going to be something that we felt our families could afford. Because that's not always the case. I've made some really fancy stuff that I sometimes wonder, especially when I was younger, if the people that I loved could buy. And I don't think, and that's what's great about Minden Mill is that, I mean, despite everything I said about, purpose of place and snow melt and lead gold and blah, 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 but like, ultimately, $45 for a good whiskey is something that I'm very proud to offer.
All day.
Like literally all day. So, I do have a question for myself.
Please.
So all of these offerings that we have been blessed and thankful that you guys have let us try, it's been at 94 proof.
Mm-hmm.
If you can speak on it, do you have anything that is a higher proof, or do you have anything maybe down the line that's coming?
That would be a down the line, for sure. Yeah, there'll be something higher proof where nothing is set in stone, but that's 100% the intention. And me and the rest of the folks at Minden and at Foley, who's our parent company, like we're all discussing where that's going to be next, and just to make sure that we're doing something that's really fun. You're not the only person to ask, and trust me, when people ask me what's coming up next, I usually just harvest my ideas from their questions. And so yeah, that's definitely one that's going to be coming up.
Well, there you go.
And what else do you have coming up? Because now I'm curious.
There's going to be we do have a floor malted single malt that's aged in orange wine barrels that we made our own orange wine for, but I probably shouldn't say too much. I'm sure that the folks...
we can talk offline.
No. Leave this one in. Leave this one. And this is, Emily, I'm really sorry. She's our marketing for this. Emily, she's wonderful. Emily, I'm really sorry to spill the beans on that one, but let's consider this a tease for the audience. Yeah, we got really cool stuff coming out, and all of it is hard working and active.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's cool. Like, I'm glad to hear that you guys are. You got some stuff coming. Like, and I know that you guys do. You got some really. Man,
and definitely more than just that too. Like lots more than just that. That was just the first one that came to mind.
Oh yeah, I can guarantee it because I can tell with your, the way that you work. Like you got that mad scientist about you, man. I love it.
Well, I'm putting that on hold for now, and just trying to grow this darn thing. But wait do you see? Wait until we get stuff really out there.
I can't wait, man. That's awesome.
I was gonna say, yeah, I can't wait. And you guys talk about you're kind of in that growth stage. You're building up to a lot of things, and you got 3 amazing products that folks can have and try right now. So, where can folks find Minden Mill products, and kind of where's that next stage of where that's headed?
Well, I mean, for the time being, we're in, I want to say, California, New York, You can always go on to the MindenMill.com, and you can go to shop. And I'm not entirely sure which states we get, but you can buy directly from us. So MindenMill.com. Also, if you're in California, if you're in New York, Florida, support your local liquor store. They're working hard. If you're in New York, swing by. I don't know if we're in Duke's yet, but they're old friends of mine. I don't know. Bully the folks at Duke's and tell them that Joe sent you. There's good folks out there all over the place. And so support your local liquor store, but if you can't find us in your neighborhood, guys, buy us online at minimill.com.
See, I feel like he's been told how to say that.
Oh, no, I have not. I've been doing this too long. I just know how to say it naturally. I also just have a diehard I just have a very sincere appreciation for the folks that support me. So supporting your liquor stores means that's how I make a dime. So I always try to bring them up.
Of course. I just need to know, do you guys come to Kentucky or no?
Oh, hell yeah, in time we will.
Okay.
I don't know when that will be, but I'll be out that way. I got a good friend in Louisville. Howdy, Skip.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So Brandon, anything else?
We're going to Lake Tahoe soon.
Come on by. You got my contact.
Are we going to put that in the hat for the
That's
next
going
trip?
in the hat. That's going in the hat. We'll tell Joe about that one. But we're just going in the hat.
But man, Joe, this has been fantastic, and like we're not bullshitting you when we say like,
no,
dude, these were 3 fantastic, fun pours, and I feel like for folks that whether you're new to bourbon and whiskey or you've had a few like us, these are ones that I think you'd have fun with. Like, I really do. They're all 3 different, but all 3 in a good way. And like Brandon was saying, you could put some of these in front of folks and they would be totally shocked by either what they are, or how old they are, and things like that.
Well, that means a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll this is kind of it's really nice when people get what you're trying to do, and so I appreciate hearing that.
We get it, man, and we can't appreciate you guys enough, or especially yourself coming on and letting us try these awesome products. Because wow, I just can't. Wow.
Wait till you come to the distillery. Come and hang out with me. It'll blow your mind, man.
I'm literally going to
Good. Good.
And we're going to make it a point to get out there. So we want to see that, because especially that's a unique. You sound like you guys have the most unique kind of setup. That anything that we're not used to seeing. Here, especially here in Kentucky. So we definitely want to try that.
It's crazy, man. I don't know how I wound up here, but to quote Pokey Lafarge, even bums get lucky sometimes.
I think you've worked hard.
I want you. They tell me I should stop being so modest, but yeah, I've worked hard, and I appreciate where I'm at. But thanks for all the help as well.
Man, absolutely. Cheers, Joe, and. Yeah, we can't wait to do this again and see what fun stuff you got up your sleeve next, man.
Absolutely.
Cheers, everybody. I got my own right here.
Cheers.